Comic books have been around since the early 1930s, starting with being as famous funnies. Comics back then were intended chiefly for children, but today, more than 50% of comic book readers are aged 13 to 34. More people are becoming obsessed with comics, but can someone really be obsessed?
You are about to see the worst half hour of television ever.
To find out why people may become obsessed with comics, we looked at how body image in the industry can affect those who read them and whether comics are generally good or bad.
I think comics, as any media form, can give a certain level of false expectations with body image. I think especially in the 80s and 90s, you'd have these ripping biceps and huge boobs and the women would be wearing next to nothing, but so would the men. So all the men who were reading at the time, which was more like 90% of the reader base back then, would have been seeing all these women and think that's what they're meant to look like when they grow up, but also look at the men and think that's what I'm meant to look like when I grow up. But I think it gives as much of a false image as most media does, TV, novels, paintings, photographs, Photoshop. I think comics overall have a positive effect. I don't think they would sell if they had a negative effect. I think definitely people can become obsessed with comics because there is the collectability factor. Anyone can become obsessed with anything, but comics is definitely one of them.
In a recent questionnaire, we discovered that 1 in 10 people read comics. As a result of this, more and more comic book stores are popping up all over popular cities. We decided to find out more about those who read comics and why the age range of comic readers has changed throughout history.
Back in the day, comics used to target kids, but then them kids turned to adults. And then them adults still want to read them comics. So now the comics tend to more target the adult generation. I think people can become obsessed with anything. If they want, or if they let it rule their lives. It can be a passion, I think, more than anything than an obsession.
The first superhero comic book was Action Comics Superman #1 and was released in 1938. Comics back then were hand-drawn, but modern comics are illustrated digitally using computers. A local freelance artist gave us some insight into the world of digital art and illustration.
I think both illustrating digitally and physically have their differences. With digital art, it's very easy to change things, which is definitely a pro. You don't have to spend so much time working on one colour theory only to have to hate it and change it all again. I think it's hard to argue whether or not they necessarily show a positive or negative aspect. Of course, addiction to anything is bad, yet at the same time, comic books can also be a gateway to people learning things like art, learning storytelling, learning just to make new friends who have the same passions as they do.
Not only do comic books provide entertainment, they are a source of income for some people. For example, some artists are commissioned and make money by selling their artwork online or at conventions such as Comic-Con.
I'm a teacher of art and photography. I also run freelance artwork projects in my spare time. Harley Quinn is basically having a tremendous impact on women at the moment. You go around Halloween parties, events, or in general, you'll see a lot of girls dressed up as Harley Quinn. A lot of the reasons you'll find that people do that is obviously because she's a very dominant female character in DC. Right now, any Harley Quinn stuff that I create sells in a jiffy. There's so many different characters now that you can identify with, depending on your gender, your stereotype, your ethnic group, your religion, your sexuality. So everybody these days, depending whether or not they really consider themselves comic book geeks, they've all got a character to identify with. So I would say yes, it is a lot easier to become obsessed.
But there's a dark side to comics. Comic books may be a source of entertainment, but obsessions can sometimes get out of hand and become something more serious like hoarding. This can be a hazard to those who are obsessed and the people around them. We found out how hoarders are dealt with by catching up with one of Magenta Living's housing officers.
Hoarding, it's a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's a safety mechanism, it's a security blanket, it's what makes them feel at home, it's their space. Sometimes it's the items that they've got around them, for instance comics, when people, that's what they love, so they just block out the outside world by surrounding themselves with thousands of them. And if you can imagine me saying I'm taking your phone and your car and your computer, but you'll never ever get these back, they'll never ever be replaced, and what's in your phone, for instance, will be gone forever, you'd be panic stricken, wouldn't you? Because your life's in them things now. And that's what it feels like to a hoarder if you want to just throw out one comic. It might look like nothing to us, but it means the world to them.